Okay, so this video is really somewhat of a bonus video. We're going to give an introduction to the color correct cop. Now at this point, we've got our character, we've got our set, and we may wish to go in and change the colors on those, tweak the colors in various aspects in terms of highlights and midtones, shadows, whether we wish to tint it to a particular color or remove color from a particular hue range. And to do this, we're going to demo the color correct cop. In our case, we're not actually going to be using color correction, but you may wish to in your case. And the color correct cop is extremely useful because you can wire it into any branch in your network, affecting just a single light, a complete character, or a complete shot. So I'm going to branch off of our character comp by middle clicking, and I'm going to create a color correct cop. Enter to accept that, enter to drop that into our network. And let's bring our visibility down to the color correct cop. Whoa. So we have various controls on the color correct cop. We have master, shadow, midtone, and highlight, and underneath all of these we have add, molt, gamma, and contrast. Add, molt, gamma, and contrast are the 4 different operations we can apply in terms of color correction. Master, shadow, midtone, and highlight are the various areas of the image that are going to be affected. Shadow, midtone, and highlight, as you may think, shadow works with the low, the dark areas of the image. Midtones works with the mid areas of the image, and highlights will work with the bright areas of the image. And we can apply our add, molt, gamma, and contrast operations to each of those areas individually. After those have been applied, or if we leave them at default, no changes will occur. The master is going to be applied to the image as a whole. In this video, we're simply going to demo add, molt, gamma, and contrast using the master so we see it affecting the whole image. So add is going to add a color to every single pixel in our image, and so we can tell from that it's really going to affect our darks more than it's going to affect the lights. If we have a black area in the image and we go ahead and we add a color to it, black plus that color is going to equal that color, so we're going to see a bigger shift. Whereas if we have a very bright area and we add that color to it, it's going to remain a very bright area. So let's take, for example, our image and let's add, say, a red color to our image. And we can see that we've added red across the image. The white areas are still fairly white, the yellow is still fairly yellow, but our black is now completely red because the dark areas are affected more by adding. I am going to switch over to the mask tab and change the operation mask to take our first inputs alpha, just so we're only affecting the character there. So the add is going to affect the darks of our image, and we can obviously apply adds very subtly or in extremes. Now, add is very useful if you're trying to match blacks in an image. So say you've got a background plate that's come either from live action or another render, and it has a certain hue to its black, because most often a black color is not actually true black. It will have a subtle hint of blue or a subtle hint of red, especially if it's coming from live action media. And so you can want to match the black on your CG renderings so that we have the same hues in the black. You can go in, you can look at the black in the render, and you can add subtle amounts of color into your blacks so that we end up matching those blacks. So that's where add comes in most useful. It can also be useful in this case for tinting darker areas of our image. So I'm going to set this back down to 0. Now multiply is going to work by multiplying whatever color is found in our image by the color we specify. And so on that basis we can see it's not going to have any effect on black, but it's going to have full effect on the light areas. So whereas add worked with the darks, molt is really working with the bright areas of our image. So if we take white and multiply it by any color, we're going to get that color. If we take black and multiply it by that color, we're still going to get black. So let's use molt and let's set that up to a red. And we can see it's having most effect on the bright areas of our image, but the dark areas are remaining unaffected. Molt is extremely useful for matching whites in an image if you're matching with a background plate. It's also incredibly useful for tinting our lights. If we wanted our light that was rendered out white tinted to a certain color, we can come in and multiply that light by the color we wanted it to be, and it would almost have been as if we set our light color to that color before we rendered. Because since our lights are effectively emitting white light, and white is affected most greatly by multiplying this color, we're effectively emitting that colored light. So again, I'm going to set this back to white so our molt has no effect. Gamma works kind of like in between add and molt. If we could imagine a curve, if I jump over to Photoshop really quickly and bring up a fresh layer.
And we're going to have to give it just 1 second to get in sync.
Yeah, just give the tablet a second to think.
But while we're giving the tablet a second, so you were saying?
Yeah, basically it works halfway in between add and molt. So let's bring up a new layer, and I'm going to hide out layers, bring up my brush. So you can imagine that we've got a graph going from dark up to light. So let's imagine this is our dark area, this is our light. Gamma, we can think of add as affecting the entire line, shifting it up and down, because we're adding a constant value to it. Molt is affecting our light areas. It's multiplying, so we're affecting the gradient of our line. Gamma works by taking that line and bending it, so the start and the end points remain in the same place, but we're bending how that basically interpolates between the start and the end points, so we're most strongly affecting our mid-ranges. And we can see this if we jump back over into Houdini and were to modify our gamma and push our gamma. Our darks are still dark, our lights are still fairly light, but the mid-ranges are being most greatly affected by our gamma shift. Finally, contrast is going to change the range between the lights and the darks in our image. With a contrast of 1, we maintain a normal contrast. If we decrease this contrast down to a value lower than 1, our lights get darker and our darks become lighter, decreasing the range between our dark values and our light values. If we boost this up to a value greater than 1, say a value of 2, our lights become much brighter and our darks become much darker, increasing the range between our lights and our darks. A subtle amount of contrast, especially increasing to a subtle amount of contrast, can bring a lot out in an image, so that may be a very useful area of color correction. So now we've seen the add, the molt, the gamma, and the contrast. Of course, this was the master, it's affecting the whole image. You can have subtle control if you wish to affect the shadows, midtones, or highlights. But hopefully that's given you an overview of the color correct node. So now if you wish to go in and do color correction on any of the various branches of your network, you can drop this node in and be away in no time. With that, we're going to now progress in the next video on to finishing off shot 2. So thanks a lot.